There are 500 events in the formal series. Some of them definitely stand out. One that most people know about, and to me is also, deserving of the rank high on the list of those things most impressive, was from 9/11, the September 11th in 2001, the terrorist attacks in New York and Washington. Like so many people, I remember what I was doing, which was having a cup of coffee in the morning, and the radio was on. They said, "Oh, a plane crashed into one of the trade towers," and I, of course, thought immediately there was somebody, a private plane, lost consciousness or wasn't aware or wanted to commit suicide. But very soon it became clear this was, of course, a completely different kind of thing. It was as I sometimes think of it, it was a shredding of the social contracts. We tore up something that everybody believes is in place. It was just destroyed. So, of course, there was also the destruction of the towers and all of that. And anyway, there was no question in my mind but what would be synchronized emotions, fear and anger and anguish, and then gradually it would shift into things like compassion and sadness and a kind of hopeful attempt to somehow make sense of it, all of that. In any case, there would be millions and millions and millions of people, all synchronized. So we set up the tests and found that the data were indeed not normal random data, but instead had structure. And we did a lot of analysis, eventually just learned that structured changes in the data, those persisted for about 3 days. Most of the time when something changes in our data, it's a little blip. But this was 3 days of persistent difference from the expected behavior. And we looked at different measures, and they all showed some kind of serious change. So in the middle of this graph are the events of the day of 9/11. The first plane hitting the tower, the second plane hitting another tower, the attack in Washington, and then the buildings collapsing. All that is in a little period of time here. This red curve shows what the EGGS, we call them, the Global Consciousness Project Network data were doing. Normal for quite a few hours. And then at 4 in the morning, which is about 4.5 hours before the first plane hit, this changed. It became very, very highly deviant and continued to be deviant until 11 or 12 o'clock, at which time all those events were finished, and then the same trace dropped just as fast as it had gone up. So we have a kind of mountain of data here in the surrounding the event. It begins before the events nominally, and we don't have a real explanation for that unless it's that a global consciousness might have premonitions. And this was a terrible event. It led to historical changes in the world. So it would not be surprising if there is a global consciousness that it could have a premonition about this terrible event. It was a big event, and so we thought about it. And there are two things that might correspond with 4 or 5 hours earlier. One of them is the fact that there were a lot of terrorists, or 20 or so, were getting ready to die. They were saying their last prayers. They were on their way to the airport at 4 in the morning. And there were probably 50 or 100 other people in the terrorist network who knew about it, and they were awake and waiting. But I don't think that's really likely the explanation. Instead, just as human beings have premonitions, quite a few people report that they were driving and they stopped or slowed down, pulled over, and then they went on and discovered there was a crash at the intersection they would have been in. They might have been killed. So, and people have dreams that predict things that happen the next day. Why wouldn't a giant global consciousness composed of all of us communicating and living in compassion with each other, why wouldn't that have a premonitory capacity?